So what we're doing is yesterday there was a lot of classroom activity, and so today they're really going through a lot of the practical aspects of breaching and going after the active shooter.
All right, and certain people, they get anxious, they get nervous when they see these things happening. How likely do these scenarios typically occur? Why do you feel that it's relevant for officers to learn this material?
Well, when you look at it from a worldly perspective, it doesn't happen very often. But when it does happen, we need to make sure that we're ready. So, typically what we do is we train our officers to be guardians, and so 99% of the time they're going to be the guardians of the community. And so that doesn't mean that when a situation occurs like an active shooter situation occurs, we shouldn't be ready. And so we want to make sure that our officers are ready to be the warriors if they need to be the warriors, and go in and take action when they need to do that. And so this is what that training is all about.
Why is this needed now?
Well, it's been needed for a while. I mean, we learned a lot from Columbine and for Virginia Tech, and so we want to make sure that our officers are prepared. And so, this is a routine training that we do. The University System of Georgia recognized that we need this training, and so they provided all the equipment that our officers are using to make sure that the training can be carried out as realistically as possible.
And as realistically as possible, why is that so important in terms of learning with actual, you explained they're going to be actual bullets, they're plastic, instead of just simulating it or, watching a video that simulates it? Why is it so important for these officers to really go through the motion?
Well, realistic training is the best kind of training that you can get. I mean, obviously when an officer goes into a situation, their training is what kicks in. And so the better we can train those officers to take action in a situation, the better off we're going to be. Years ago we trained differently in terms of how we did firearms training, where we would hit a target, and then after that scenario was over, we'd stop and pick up the brass. Well, we found out during a training situation that officers were picking up their brass instead of engaging the perpetrator. So we learn a lot of things through training, and so the best way to do the training is make sure that the training that we do is as realistic as possible.
Do you feel over the years the training ramifications have been, I would say, the word I'm looking for, maybe improved from the year before, just on what's going on a year around? Have you guys been adding things to it? Talk a little bit about
Yeah, we are always learning. We always take an incident, for instance, the incident that occurred at Georgia War. So we take that incident, we have after action reviews, we review what happened, and then we improve our plans from there. Same thing with Columbine. The way we responded as a law enforcement community to Columbine is much different than the way we respond today. And we do that through the things that we learn from past responses. So it is always good for us to be able to make sure that we review what has happened in the past to improve our responses. And that's what this does. The alert training actually is the gold standard for law enforcement active shooter response.
And with the recent shooting in Florida, students are learning, they're going through training themselves. How does this training go hand in hand with what students and teachers are learning?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are teaching our students our students, staff, and faculty, our community, basically, what we really want them to do in case of an active shooter situation. So we want to make sure that they're trained and they need to know what our response is going to be to an active shooter event. And so, things have changed, like we mentioned just a few minutes ago. Things have changed to where, we used to just go in after the shooter and nobody comes in until after the shooter is down. We don't do that anymore. We have teams that come in and care for the wounded now, much different than we did, say, at Virginia Tech or Northern Illinois, some of those events. So yeah, we want to make sure that our community knows what the law enforcement response is going to be.
And we mentioned just a minute ago where, they are learning to take action And I know for some people that is a little nerve-wracking, you know, as a citizen, you know, we're required to, call police and wait for police, but now it's like, take action. Can you give us a little bit more of advice of how they can take action if the situation does come up?
Sure. Yeah, so we teach our community basically a run, hide, fight scenario. And, you know, running is, I mean, we all know what that is. We hear shots fired over here. We get an information through our cell phone or emergency communication that says, hey, there's an incident over here. You want to try and remove yourself from that situation if at all possible. Hide, we teach hide as an active role. So not just hiding behind a tree, but actively barricading yourselves in a spot where you can't be attacked. And then finally, fight. Fight is also an active word. So if you find yourself in a situation where it's you and the other person, you got to do whatever you got to do to make sure that you can survive that event.
We touched on this a little while ago. You can look at Ashley when you answer the question. We know this training was set up before the Georgia War Home shooting and the Parkland shooting, but are there any specific changes you guys may have added to your training once those incidents happened?
No, I mean, we haven't changed the training based on the Georgia War incident. The training, like I said, is alert training, is the gold standard. So what they will do, this is training from the FBI and Texas State University. So what they'll do is they'll look at past events and improve from those after actions to improve the course curriculum. So at this point, we haven't made any changes.
That's a great segue into my final question, which is, this obviously isn't the first training that your guys have had, nor Richmond County Sheriff's Office, the Marshal's Office. So what do you hope this training adds to your department?
Well, first of all, I want to make sure that our officers are prepared, as prepared as they can be. You know, I mentioned the guardians. You know, 99% of the time we're going to be guardians of the community. But when something like Georgia War happens, or something like what happened in Parkland, Florida happens, we have to be prepared. We have to be ready to be the warriors to protect our community. And so we want to make sure that our university community and the community around us in the Augusta area knows that we are prepared to handle a situation like that. So it's kind of twofold. We want to make sure that our officers are prepared, but we also want to build trust within the community to have the community understand that we are prepared.